Welcome to our distinguished lecture series, co-hosted tonight by the Toledo Museum of Art. I'm Heidi Apple, Dean of the Jesup Scott Honors College. The University of Toledo Honors College is a community of highly motivated students from all majors on campus. Our honor students are challenged to think more deeply and broadly about what they learn. And our speaker tonight will challenge us to be better visual thinkers and doers. In recognition of the power of visual thinking, the Toledo Museum of Art and the University of Toledo signed a memorandum last fall to work together to integrate the principles of visual literacy into the U-Toledo curriculum. An interdisciplinary group of university faculty and TMA staff have been sharing ideas and expertise, which has culminated in a visual literacy elective for medical students, a visual literacy seminar for honor students, and the introduction this fall of a set of modules available to all faculty to use in their courses. And we've only just begun. This great progress in such a short time was fueled in part by the support of Judith and Marvin Erb, and we thank them for that. We also thank the University of Toledo Alumni Association for live streaming this event. An effective collaboration depends on an openness to new ideas and enthusiasm for trying them out. I couldn't ask for a better partner in this collaboration than Mike Deach, Director of Education and Engagement at the Toledo Museum of Art, who will introduce our speaker. Mike?
Thank you, Heidi, and welcome everybody to the Peristyle at the Toledo Museum of Art. I'm just curious, how many of you, is this your first time in the Peristyle? Anybody? All right, so great. Welcome to the hall that Florence Scott Libby built in 1933. We are really lucky to have this spectacular venue and a spectacular speaker to go with this venue. Just a few announcements that I wanted to make before I introduce Sunni and hand it over to the real show. For those of you that have been to an event before with my colleague Scott Boberg, I'm going to follow in his footsteps here. I am holding up my cell phone not because I am expecting a call, but to remind you all to please silence your cell phones. Although Sunni did tell me if a cell phone rings during the middle of her presentation, she will call on you and ask you to answer your phone. So just be wary of that. I also want to thank Pizza Cat. So many of you may be sitting against Pizza Cat boxes right now. In case you haven't figured it out already, this is not going to be your standard lecture today. We're going to try to make this very participatory and interactive. And Pizza Cat donated all of these boxes to us tonight so we could have fun drawing and doodling and being creative. So please join me in a round of applause for Pizza Cat and their wonderful donation. Now, I could say, please bring your box back to Pizza Cat to redeem a free pizza after this is over, but I would be lying, so I'm not going to do that. But do please patron Pizza Cat when you get an opportunity. They are great neighbors of the Toledo Museum of Art, and we are very happy to have them here in Toledo. All right, so enough of my comments here. It is my privilege and honor to introduce our distinguished speaker today, Sunni Brown. Sunni is the founder of an international creative consultancy that uses applied visual literacy, design thinking, and graphic facilitation to solve complex problems.
Complicated.
In 2014, this is always very easy to present and introduce somebody when they're standing right next to you. She started a global conversation around visual literacy called the Doodle Revolution, based on a book of the same name. If you have not purchased this or read this or used it, I would encourage you, the moment this lecture is over, to go out and buy one. It is really transformative, and it was for me. She was named one of the 100 most creative people in business and one of the 10 most creative people on Twitter, both by Fast Company.
No,
Did you know that?
I did not.
All right. She is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and professional meeting facilitator. Her TED Talk, which if you haven't seen, again, like Doodle Revolution, I would encourage you to watch, has drawn more than 1.5 million views, and her work on visual thinking has been featured in the New York Times, the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, Time, and Wired, as well as being featured twice on CBS Sunday Morning, as well as the Today Show.
Pretty good.
Her forthcoming book teaches a method she calls deep self-design, which deploys visual thinking as an inner science for dissolving personal obstacles.
Yes.
Please join me in welcoming Sunni to the stage.
Is my mic on? Can y'all hear me? I told Mike I can't do the high drama, like when they sweep the curtain and then it's like I can't, it's so awkward. So I wanted to just stand right next to him and make him feel awkward instead. Thought that would be polite. How are y'all? Thank you so much for coming. I'm so grateful for you to be here. You all came from many, many miles, I assume, like Alaska, Bali. You flew really far to see me. I really appreciate that. And I'm sorry that he mentioned that there's no free pizza. I was like, don't say these things. We were thinking about assembling the pizza boxes, and then we decided that would be like a mythological pizza problem that we would present to you. So thankfully, they're still flat, and they are going to be used as drawing tools. So FYI, this is a participatory experience, and it is interactive. And I won't put you under the heat, like I don't make people do things, but I'm going to invite you to do things that are a little bit on your edge of comfort and a little bit on your edge of experience, potentially. How many of you are doodlers? Just curious. Oh, yeah, my people. Nice. How many of you are visual thinkers or identify as a visual thinker? And how many of you are introverts? Please stand up. Just joking. But how many of you don't identify as a visual thinker at all and have no experience with that or concept of it? One. Brave soul. I love that. Thank you for coming. Thank you in particular. And I was going to ask you guys, so I'm embarrassed to say this, but I have not ever been to Toledo. This is my first time, and I'm really excited about it. So of course I was doing my internet research, and I discovered that y'all have a motto. And do you know what your motto is? What is it?
Laborare estorare.
She said it right, too. That's awesome. So I'm from Austin, and we don't have a motto. We only have an unofficial motto, and do y'all know what it is? Keep Austin weird. I was like, how am I going to go to a distinguished and respectable place that has a motto like laborare estorare, which means to work is to pray? Did y'all know that? Isn't that, I was kind of intrigued. I love that. Why do you know that? That's confusing. I love that to work is to pray. That is your motto. And I was intrigued by that, because to me it meant that you're not just saying like something fall from heaven, you're actually saying, I want the fruits of my labor to create an opportunity for me. And so we are going to do some work/praying together today in about 2/3 of the way through the process. And I do want to thank Mike and Heidi for bringing me, because it's a risk. It's risky, you know. You never know what I'm going to do, and it's just confusing also. So I appreciate that, because I'm not distinguished. I'm more informal, and I noticed when they were sending the beautiful invitations that brought some of you here, I was often presented as a visual literacy expert. And I just want to make a full confession, which is that I am not a visual literacy expert. I'm not an expert of anything at all. I know. Where's my clicker? How can we trust this lady? Oh, here's the reason. So I'm curious about this. What would be the downside of being an expert, do you imagine? If somebody was an expert, what would be the downside? Yes. Yes, everybody relies on you. What else?
People would think you were a know-it-all.
A know-it-all, exactly, yes. High expectations. What else? It goes on and on, yeah.
If you're wrong, what happens?
Dan, what are you doing here? If you're wrong, what happens? It's dangerous. Yes.
You're always worried about somebody being more expert.
You're always comparing and ranking your own knowledge. You're worried about someone having more expertise than you, totally.
Or it implies that there's a finite amount of
Yes. Boom. It implies that there's like a limit to what you can know, and once you know it, then you know it all. So there's nothing more to be learned. So I'm not an expert. And I'm not interested in being an expert for all of the reasons that you described. And this is one of my favorite quotes on the downside of expertise. And you all nailed it, right? There's much more joy and play to be what I call an experimentalist, or a questionologist, right? A person who is constantly on the edge of thinking they know something, discovering something, then finding another edge. And so you're constantly moving into a space of not knowing and being uncertain and having doubt, having what I call active doubt, which I think keeps you awake and alive and interested and humble, you know? So I don't refer to myself as an expert, although I'm clearly a genius. So, and I will say, I'm just joking, I'm joking. So I will say that that mindset, that growth mindset, has been really useful in these fields, which are the fields that I swim around in and play in. And visual literacy, the reason why visual literacy is so powerful is because it's actually sort of the lifeblood of all of these methodologies, and it informs and instructs all of these methodologies. And so I have been playing in these fields for over a decade, and while I did not become an expert, what I did become, which was what Mike spoke of, is the leader of the doodle revolution. Was not like I was a kid and I was like, I think that's a thing and I'm gonna be that. It kind of just unfolded naturally, and it was a intentionally provocative thing that I wanted to do, which is I wanted to start a conversation as big and wide as I could around the efficacy of visual language and visual literacy. And I didn't know how to do that other than observing and witnessing and practicing and applying. And then eventually I came to the conclusion that the doodle is like an entryway into visual literacy. And that's why I honed in on the doodle as the first concept for a bigger conversation around visual literacy that's actually being accelerated by these two institutions. And so what do you guys think the definition of a doodle is? What's the like unflattering version of it? Scribble, yes. Yes. Sketch, yeah, is that unflattering, or do you like sketching? We like sketching. Yeah, what else? What do people think you're doing when you're doodling?
Not paying attention.
Nothing. You're not paying attention, yes. Meaningless, exactly. So I wanted to start there, yeah. Say it again. Spacing out. Do you get in trouble in class? Do you doodle in class? I'm gonna call your teacher. So I thought first, if I wanted to ignite a conversation around visual literacy, I needed to find something universal, humane, and obvious that it was being used for cognition, and that's why the doodle became the sort of flagship for this bigger conversation. So I redefined the definition of doodling, and I turned it into this, and I'm still knocking on Merriam-Webster's door, you know? They haven't quite figured it out, but they will. I'm confident they will, particularly when universities get on board, right? So it really is ultimately making spontaneous marks to help yourself think. That's what all these people have been doing for thousands of years. They have been activating visual language to support their own cognition process. And so that is what I'm committed to as well in all these different forms. So what do I mean by visual literacy? I mean this, and there's various definitions, but there is a core definition, which is essentially the same thing that you think of when you think of literacy. It means that you have the capacity to integrate and relate with and play with knowledge in a way that makes it meaningful for you. In this case, it's just with visual language as opposed to just standard language, right? And I love that y'all are all visual thinkers. Like, what do y'all do? Just shout it out. Like, somebody does sculpting, what do y'all do? How did I get you here? I'm so excited. What do you do? You with the beautiful turquoise. Good morning. You do?
I just do it for fun.
For fun?
Everywhere I am, as long as I have a pencil and a paper.
Nice.
I do it.
You do it, so you do it naturally and everywhere you go.
Thinking about it.
Yeah.
I want to draw a
Beautiful.
make movement with my pencil.
Wow, see, so she's already swimming. It's so much fun. Exactly. It's such a... Oh, yeah. Oh, nice. We'll give you another one. If you cover it with doodles, you can have another one. Yes. Sorry to wake you up on that one. I just called you out so hard. So it's weird that I became the leader of the doodle revolution because this is what I swam in for most of my life until I was 29 years old. I didn't actually discover the power of visual language. It was very happenstantial how that occurred. So I was a public school kid all my life, and they were not good public schools. I was in deep East Texas, very small town. And my teachers did their best, but the quality of education was really low. And I was lucky to have, we didn't have a bookstore in our town, So I was really lucky to have a public library, which is essentially what was my education, was essentially reading as many books as I possibly could. And so my dominant focus was language, because that was, of course, it seemed like an obvious path to get somewhere out of a small town. So for me to have arrived in this place of being an advocate for visual language is unusual and surprising. But when I was doing all that research and study around those 4 methodologies that I was talking about a little bit, oh yeah, that's right, here we go. This is actually a good interlude. This is my backstory. I'm gonna give you more backstory. I begrudgingly entered into visual language. So I graduated and I had a real confidence in communication and being skillful in language. And I ended up at this company called The Grove, which was the first visual thinking company in the United States as far as I know. And I was from Texas, East Texas, and I was in California when I got this job. And I had such a small world that I thought everyone in California was just stoned. And like, they were all kind of like hippie goofballs. And so I could not take visual language seriously. I totally forgot about this part of the story. Yeah, so I was actually really skeptical about it. So this was my first begrudging attempt at using some form of visual language in an organization. I didn't have a choice. So they were all interested in it. They used it in a business context, and I didn't have a choice. And I was the executive assistant to the founder of that company. So I ended up having to do it. And then eventually I became what's called a graphic recorder. Have y'all ever heard of graphic recorders? So they're basically large-scale visual note takers, and they do it in real time. And I also begrudgingly became one of these. And ultimately, when you're a graphic recorder, you're basically a silent partner. So you're not there, you're in service to the group, so you're not there to capture your own thoughts. You're there to listen to a speaker and funnel that auditory content into an integration of visual language and icons and symbols. So that's what I did for a while. And every time I would complete one of those sessions, I recognized that even though I was in service to the group, my learning process had been transformed. So that was interesting. So what I discovered, every time I would do a large-scale visual note-taking experience, this is what I noticed from like a meta level when I would observe my own learning process. So I figured out that I had increased retention and recall long after the event ended. And a lot of times graphic recorders are in situations where they have no familiarity with the topic. So I would be listening to a conversation about cybersecurity or accounting, like at a bank, or alien life, things that I am not, I might seem like I'm subsumed in them, but I was not familiar with these topics, and I would always remember the topics, I would understand them, and then I could actually be creative with them, which really is a mark of comprehension. When you know something so deeply that you can innovate around it, I was actually creative around the stuff. So my first inclination was to assume that, oh, clearly I'm so bright. Like, look how smart I am. I can go into all these subject areas and just grok it, But that was not the truth. What do you think the truth was? That's a big statement to ask, right? You're like, the truth is we've boldly gone nowhere before. Yes?
You were activating your brain's schemata, filing it away faster.
Yeah. I was activating my brain schemata and filing it away faster. That sounds awesome. Yes, that was the real truth. The truth was that I had integrated visual language and it had transformed my cognitive process. So that made me interested. That made me go, whoa, what just happened? Because I was very skeptical. And I was small-minded, to be honest, about my perspective at the time. I had only the dominant narrative that linguistic knowledge is what makes you smart. And so for me to arrive at this awareness was not insignificant because I was one of the resistors, But it was undeniable that this was occurring. So that made me interested. And so over the years, I did study a lot of doodlers. I worked with a lot of doodlers, and I did a lot of research and a lot of testing. And I categorized the findings into these 3 big buckets that visual language gives people, the spontaneous making of marks for visual language. The first one is pleasure, which is kind of what you were speaking to. So what I noticed is when people are moving into a space of doodling or visual language, their bodies seem to relax. So their breathing slows down, their heart rate slows down, they move into like a focused, meditative, concentrated state, and they seem to lower their anxiety. So they just get pleasure. They get relaxed pleasure from just a simple act of creating visual language without having it be goal-oriented. So that alone is a value add. So if the doodle did nothing else but give you that, that's a lot. For an anxiety-provoked time period, that's a lot. And it's free, it doesn't cost a thing. But the other thing it did, which is obviously I'm a big fan of this one, is cognitive power. So all the things I talked about before, it essentially turns on channels in the mind that are asleep otherwise. And it does it in a big, robust way. So all of the things that you would want to increase in a learning process, increase in a learning process. And you do not have to be a natural doodler or a natural visual thinker. You can be trained into that, and it makes it multi-sensory, right? So it makes it where you have semantic translations going on, visual translation, motor skills are involved, and your emotional substrates are involved. So it's a power tool. It's a super powerful cognitive tool. And the last one is performance. So you can see these images are of groups working together. When you integrate visual thinking into a group collaborative process, it's like stand back. It is crazy what happens because people suddenly it's like they wake up. It's like they start going, they ask better questions, they ask deeper questions, they engage with each other differently, engage with each other. They solve problems faster, they accelerate everything that you would hope to accelerate, they remember things, they see things differently. I mean, it's big, and you can do it in hundreds of ways. So when I saw that, I was like, man, this is serious. This requires a conversation, like a real big conversation. And I don't know if I'm preaching to the choir, and I know that y'all have different mediums that you work in. So I'm referring to visual thinking and collaborative problem solving, which does not require special training. It does not require any special skills or any deep creativity. It actually is activated by these really simple methods. But have y'all ever heard this when you were doodling in class? Or when you try to bring visual language into your office or into your workplace? Have any of you ever tried? And do you get shut down? Or do you do it like this? You do it under your desk? I mean, this is the case. You do run into this mindset, and it's understandable. I had that same mindset too. I feel like this is a more illuminated group because you're at the Toledo Art Museum, for heaven's sake, on a Thursday night. But this you will encounter. And so if you try to move the needle on visual thinking and visual literacy, invariably you will find people that are not there yet. Like just the other day, I was in an ISD in Texas, and it was a literacy panel, and the whole conversation was about elevating K through 12 literacy, standard literacy. And you can use visual literacy to elevate literacy, but there was one person who brought me there who was completely on board, and she was all over it. But there were two other people that could not wrap their head around it. Yeah, I know, it's just shocking. I'm like, it's everywhere. But it's getting better. It's definitely getting better. And I don't blame them because I understand that there's some hangovers from some perceptions that we have in the past that just we haven't freed ourselves from. And so I would go forth and prosper regardless, work and pray, and this will eventually dissolve. And it is doing that. It's doing that all over the place in different organizations. But do not be surprised if you run into these ogres. But then there's this one, right? That's actually the big boogeyman, the internal boogeyman. That's the one where everybody freaks out. That's another reason why I use the word doodle, because when I say doodle, people are like, oh, I can do that. And then there's other stigmas I have to wade through. But at least they can do that, right? So here is the secret. How many of you would say that you can draw? Yeah, I can. That's 50%. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. This is what? This is the first audience I've ever been to where more than half of you identify as people who can draw. That is super awesome. And when you try to teach other people how to draw, are they in environments that are art or art history or places where they're supposed to, or are they in other kinds of environments? Nod your head if it's just an art environment. Okay, shake your head if it's some other environment. Got it. That's awesome. You got to try things. So this is the big boogeyman for most people, and I just want to make another confession, which is that I have been a professional visual thinker for 12 years, and I cannot draw. Yeah, for real. So when I fly home from Toledo, I'm not kidding, when I fly home from Toledo, I will take my first drawing class on September 16th. I know. I'm so excited. I'm beyond excited. And I'm also concerned, to be honest, not because I want to be good at any of that, But because when you're doing the type of visual thinking that I'm referring to, it actually has a rapidity that is required because you're timing it with like a teacher or a speaker, and you're also working in a group process. So the visual economy, the quickness of it is useful. It's a tool. So a lot of times when I'm training people, I have to teach them to unlearn how to draw. So I feel like I'm gonna throw a wrench in my own wheels when I learn how to draw, because I'm gonna have to unlearn when I'm in certain environments. But I'm still excited regardless, because that's like a huge step for me. Little girl from East Texas can barely read like that. So I'm just reassuring you that it's all going to be okay. And really, this is the point. This is ultimately the point. So when people get concerned about not being able to draw, I remind them that it's really not about drawing. Drawing is a robust and beautiful experience, like the intimacy that you get when you draw a mango and you just sit with it and you notice it and you see it. That is gorgeous, right? And that is like a Zen practitioner moment right there. But in this particular field of study, it is about improved thinking. And so here's some of my favorite thinking moves, okay? There is a book called Making Thinking Visible. I love this book. It teaches people how to leverage what they call high leverage thinking moves. And there are dozens of them, and they help you be a better thinker. It came out of the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And it was from Project Zero, where they studied how do you learn, they learn how to learn, right? So they learned that there's multiple thinking moves, and this is one of them. So I'm going to give you 4, and I'm going to tell you a story around one, and then that one is the one we're going to play a game around. Cool? So that's one of them. And this is just a group of people that were actually describing, this is a cable company, and they were describing their current established menu of programming, visually describing it, and then they were trying to make a case for digital offerings that they would make. So they were doing that as a group, and they were doing that, as you can see, in multisensory formats. And none of these people are trained visual thinkers, right? You just set them up for success and let them go forward, and it accelerates the conversation, and they solve problems a lot faster. That's a high-power thinking move. This is one of my favorite ones, uncovering complexity. So you can make system maps and process maps and comparison maps, and you can start to look at the world more clearly and intimately and specifically. So a lot of times people have their own mental model in their mind, and they are talking to someone and they think that person also has the same mental model as them, and then they can't quite understand why they're getting lost in the conversation. And it's because people can't see what the other person can see. So when you can visually articulate it, it makes a huge difference. It changes the whole experience. This is one of my favorites as well. Making connections. So you can also just use it to understand relationships, right? And this is just people in the public who came together, and instead of having a typical networking experience, we asked more substantive relational questions that they can then show each other and deepen their conversations, and they're total strangers, And they also, this was what they call user-generated content. So the conference organizers wanted to gather content from the people who attended in order to figure out what they could improve. So the possibilities are endless, right? The thinking moves that you can leverage are endless. And here's my, before I tell you my favorite one, I want to ask you if you guys remember this story. Do y'all remember that? Y'all would, right? Because you're like visual artists. Man, I wish I could get a read on you. I'm like, are you bartenders? Are you taxi drivers? Are you sculptor? Like, what are you all? But, so you do know the dress. That's so comforting, because there's like a running joke in my family that my social lag time, like my lag time around popular culture is legendary. Like I will call my brother and I'll go, I just heard of this lady named Beyonce. And he'll be like, and I did that like a week ago. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know anything about popular culture. And so, but this I knew about because it's in the visual perception space. And so the dress. So for those of you who don't know, in a nutshell, it was a wedding in Scotland. Like, do y'all all literally know the whole backstory? Okay, just checking. Also, the quality of the image is like that because it was an internet GIF, so my bad for that. But it was a wedding in Scotland. The mother of the bride sent a photograph of the dress that she was going to wear to the wedding. And the bride said, well, it's not the right color. Like the wedding is blue and black, so why are you sending me a white and gold dress? And the mom's like, what? What are you talking about? This dress is blue and black. So the bride shows it to the groom, and the groom's like, no, it is the right color that your mom said. And the bride's like, excuse me? So they have like a kind of epic, those arguments you have right before you get married anyway. So they had like an epic argument. And then to settle the argument, they sent the image to the wedding party, who then all proceeded to argue about it as well, so that none of them could agree on the color scheme either. And so eventually they take it to the internet, which is why they said it broke the internet, because she put it on Tumblr, the bride put it on Tumblr, and then all hell broke loose because the internet had like epic battles around what color is this damn dress, you know? And it was like it divided families, like people wouldn't go to Christmas together, you know, it was dramatic, and people had tribes and factions, and I mean, it was quite a scene, let's just say like that. It got so involved that there were some celebrities that chimed in, and I've never heard of this lady, but her name's Taylor Swift, and she said, oh, what did she say? It was so awesome. Oh, she goes, I think the dress is a trick. I'm confused and scared. And I was like, that is scary. So scary. It's like this lady who I heard her in first class, like she was in first class. I don't fly first class, FYI, but she was in first class, and she was like, they asked her to move to coach, and she said, is it scary back there? I was like, I'm scared of you, lady. I am scared of you. But so, and then Anna Kendrick chimed in about the dress, and she said, if that dress is in white and gold, the universe is falling apart. So people really were baffled by this. And I was getting disheartened, because I was like, watching people like move into position, you know, rather than actually inquiring into the nature of the question. And so finally, Mindy Kaling, who I actually know who she is, she's a comedian, she was like, I think that the dress is so offensive because it's an assault on our idea that there is objective truth and that we have it. So she finally like got to the heart of the matter, and then they eventually took the dress, this whole phenomenon, to many neuroscientific labs, but one of them, and Dr. Pascal Wallish said, what did he say was the best thing? He said, oh, we have to get past this idea of correctness. Reality is richer than your perception, right? And that, to me, was the most provocative and intriguing and valuable lesson of the dress. And I think that was true for really any thoughtful people, which is that we don't all see the world the same, and we never have, and we never will, right? So that brings me to my most favorite thinking move that is connected to the game you're going to play, okay? This one, wondering and considering different viewpoints. It's really hard for human beings to get outside of our perspective. You know, it's just the nature of it. Like, there's this really wonderful, it's a short spiritual teacher story where a spiritual seeker asks a spiritual teacher, what is the nature of the universe? And the teacher says, it's right in front of your nose. And the seeker says, why can't I see it? And the teacher says, your me is in the way, right? So I want to talk about the me. What do you think the me is? What am I referring to when I'm talking about the me? This talk is called Seeing Past Your Me. So what am I talking about? Just like one word at a time, yeah.
Preconceived ideas.
Yes, preconceived ideas. Yes, what else? Bias, yeah, absolutely. Ego, yes. What else? History, absolutely. Yeah. Fear, totally. 100%. So we're all familiar with the me, right? Because we all occupy it all the time. In a nutshell, like if you talk to like behavioral psychologists, evolutionary biologists, if you talk to perceptual neuroscientists, if you talk to all the like brainiacs, they don't know the answer to consciousness or the me. Nobody knows yet. It's still very mysterious. So in a nutshell, it's essentially our interplay with reality. So we have our senses. We actually have 9 senses. Did y'all know that? We have 9. We're like super sensory. And then we have our story about that, right? Like that's basically what humans are, is these amalgams of interacting with stimulus and sensory equipment. Heidi, I know you love this because she's a scientist. Interacting with reality, but telling stories about it. So I think of the me as like this fishbowl that you wear on your head. All of us wear it on our heads. And we walk around with this bowl on our heads, and we project our me inside of the bowl, and then we think that's the only reality, right? And then when we run into people that have different realities, we're really irritated. We're like, no, that dress is blue and white, lady, and I'm going to get you, you know, or whatever. And that's just what we do. And so I am intrigued by processes that allow us to soften that and to dissolve that. And that's why I think that the visual literacy piece is so huge. Like, it's not just about increasing your own cognitive power, which is valuable. And it's not just about experiencing pleasure and relaxation, which is also wonderful. It's also about seeing past yourself and seeing through your own biases and things that we identify with and things that we hold dear and things that we cling to, so that we have an experience of seeing from someone else's perspective. And it was Marcel Proust that said, the greatest voyage of discovery is seeing the world through someone else's eyes. And visual literacy is a real big power tool for seeing not just through the perspective of another person, but for seeing the world in a different way, and for seeing it for what it is and what it isn't. And you can actually show that to yourself, you can reflect that back to yourself, and you can show it to other people, and it is transformative. It's a transformative experience when you actually start wondering, what is it that I don't know? I'm not an expert, I'm an experimentalist. What do I not know? What could I learn? So that is what the game is gonna be, okay? How do y'all feel about this? Y'all are stoked, right? Okay, so I am gonna set you up for success. Now, I call this a game because I have another book called Game Storming, which is about like provocations for getting people to think differently. So I refer to it as a game, but you could think of it as a thought experiment or directed mental process, you know? And I am gonna set you up for success, and this is how the pizza boxes become relevant. We're not gonna play Frisbee or anything, which that would be fun though. So we're gonna do this, how to summon compassion for someone you can't relate to. And that person could be yourself if you want it to be, just so you know. Sometimes we can't relate to our fishbowl, right? And y'all are so skillful in drawing, this seems ridiculous, but if there are people out there that don't know how to put things together, this is a visual alphabet. This is what I teach to people that are like straight up, no artistic inclination, no instinct toward creativity, and deeply need some kind of tools that they feel comfortable with, right? Because if you just put these together, you put these all together, right, you can break down anything. So this is what I was talking about, the simplicity. Visual thinking is often about simplicity and quickness, because we do a lot of rapid prototyping, a lot of quick problem solving, and a lot of iterations and sketches, you know? So that's why I show people this piece. But y'all are advanced. I feel like you're advanced. Okay, good. That's awesome. So that's so great, because then your maps that you make are going to be even more exciting. And I'm going to have like however many of you there are. Okay, so here's the first thing I want you to do. If you came with someone that you know, I want you to move away and find someone that you don't know. Isn't that the worst? I know. It's hard. Go find a stranger. You can stay. Groups of two. Yeah, thank you. So once you're settled in, thank y'all so much for doing that. Oh yeah, yeah. You're shy. Cool. Okay. Y'all are already making new friends? Or are you still with the same people and you're tricking me? Okay, so the first step in the game is to find 3 non-obvious things that you have in common with your new person. Non-obvious, so they cannot be like, you have black hair. You also are from Toledo. And you need to dig a little bit deeper to find 3, and I'm gonna give you 3 minutes to do it. And I'm not gonna time it, so it could be 5, I have no idea. However, I will pretend that it's 3. Okay? You got it? Non-obvious, yes. You talk to each other. One more minute. One more minute. Seconds. Okay, time. And time. It's so fun. Did y'all find more than 3? Who found more than 3? Nice. New besties. Yeah? That's awesome. I want to play that later. That's so cool. Okay, so staying where you are. As you can see, the intention of the game is to summon compassion. Now, there is a distinction between compassion, sympathy, empathy, and pity. Did y'all know that? Yeah. So this is actually compassion that I'm interested in. That's the goal. It doesn't mean that you have to nail it. If you don't, you can extend compassion to yourself. But that's the intention of the game. And so it's a 5-step process map, okay? And the goal, so you see this is the goal, which is compassion. So I want you to have 3 icons in play for this experience. One is of a stick figure or whatever kind of human figure that you can do that's quick, so not a long. One for an icon or a symbol for something you dislike or are averse to. And the third is a symbol for compassion that's not a heart. The first one is any kind of stick figure or person, human being, that you can draw quickly. Yeah, and I'll give you some examples of it. So I am going to show you all a little bit more so you can kind of get a real feel for what I'm going to ask you to do. But that's the general idea. It does not have to look like this. It does not have to be a bunch of squares. It is a process map. Process maps can be all manner of visual structures. So I'm just giving you that so you know I do want it to be 5 steps, whatever you create, and I do want the end game to be compassion. So I'll give you an example of somebody that I might choose as a player in the game. It would be, I overheard some women talking about the U.S. women's soccer team, and I did not do my hair like Megan Rapinoe, I swear to God. It was an accident. I swear, it was an accident. It was a long accident. Anyway, but I do love the women's U.S. soccer team. So I overheard these women talking about them and saying that they thought they were demanding in their request for equal pay. And, oh yeah, I heard it loud and clear. And so naturally, I'm like, so my fishbowl, I'm wearing my fishbowl, and I'm like, that goes against everything I hold dear, Like pay equity, like how can you not like pay equity? Who doesn't like, right? So that started happening. So I just go right into this practice, like, okay, what is her me? What is her history and experience and identity, and what are the situations that have led her to believe these things? Not so that I can come to her position or defend her position or anything, but just so that when I'm interacting with her, I'm more respectful and have a little bit more spaciousness around it. So it's just a practice, So that's the end game, is that you can have a place of civility and decency and respect, even for people you can't relate to. So do you have somebody in mind that you can't relate to? Now, don't make it your arch nemesis, because this game is really hard if it's your arch nemesis. But you can get someone who's just slightly irritating, Do you have someone in mind? Is it me? No. Okay. And so I'm giving you these just to show you the simplicity of it, that it can be this simple. If y'all want to take it deeper than that, you totally can do that, but they can be this simple that you can make scenes, and your stick figures can really be that simple. And it can also be this scratchy and messy, totally fine. But if you do, so you see this is a version of a process map. This is showing, I think, how to make toast. Yes, how to make toast. So there it is, right? How you make toast. But I do want captions. So the thing about visual literacy is that it's an integration of words and symbols and icons and colors. So we don't, subjectivity is not our fave. We like it when we can leave something with someone and they know what it is. So it's not interpretation on their part, it's actually clear, because a lot of it is about communication. So I do want captions so that when you show it to others, they know what it is, okay? So don't make a big deal about it, just start there. And I'm gonna give you, I wish I knew what my next, okay, can you all close your eyes? I don't know what my next slide is. Okay, great, yay. Okay, you can keep them open. So I wanted to give you icons in case you need them. So, part of visual language, right, is the symbolism. And like you take high-level concepts and low-level concepts and nouns and you create really quick iconic symbols to use when you're doing rapid visual thinking. So I wanted to give you all a little menu in case you want those. But you don't have to use them, because I think you all got this in the bag. I think the hardest part's going to be summoning compassion for your arch nemesis. Does somebody have a question? Oh, you're just waving your pizza box. Cool. Okay, so you have, what time is it? Who knows? 6:49. So you have 5 minutes to do your process map, right? How's that land for you? And then 5 minutes to share it with your partner. And then we have 15 minutes for questions. Yeah? Yes.
Okay, what were the 3 elements again?
Oh, a human stick figure, like a figure of a human, a symbol of something that you find that represents dislike or aversion, something you don't like, because I want those to be integrated into the process map if you can. And then the third symbol is something around compassion, like a symbol for compassion that's not a heart only. You can use a heart, but make something else with it. It's just so lazy, Do y'all know what I'm saying?
Yeah, confused. And this all ties into the person we find irritating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Thank you. So I'll give you a little more instructions. So if you're confused, yeah, thanks. It's always, that's why I'm calling it experimentalism. So you can do anything to summon compassion. So, for example, if you wanted to use technology to do it, like if you wanted to put on a virtual reality helmet and try and have a day in the life of that person, then do a 5-step process for doing it that way, right? So there's many roads to compassion. You can think about it from an emotional perspective, a sociological perspective, a technological perspective. You could think about it, if they were me, how would I be empathic toward myself? So that is wide open. Like, I'm not going to give you that thinking. I want you to break down that process, the path to compassion. If your goal was to feel some level of well-being toward another person, how would you take yourself there and draw those 5 scenes? I know, it's hard.
The 3 things that he said, one occupies each of those, one of those, 3 of those 5.
Yeah, it would be great if they're in there. Yeah. You can put them in anywhere, just if you use them. Yeah.
Sorry, are we supposed to use those 3 symbols?
You can. It's an option. You don't have to. They're for people that need that, but you don't have to. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So for those of you who think like engineers, it's going to be fine. Just go with it. Just go with it. You don't have to predict the outcome. The only thing you're trying to do is 5 steps toward compassion. Nothing more. Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh, I can. After the talk, I can tell you. It's mostly just a general sensation of like you're not emotionally fatigued by your feeling toward them. So you're holding a space and your heart's open, but you're not feeling what they're feeling. Does that make sense? That's actually what compassion is. Was that your question? Uh-huh. But if you get to sympathy, that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That one? Yeah, sure. A little cheat sheet. They're in my friend's book. It's called Design the Life You Love. In my friend's book. It's called Design the Life You Love.
Design a life,
Design the Life You Love. That's the name of my friend's book.
designer life,
Design the life. Design the life you love.
design the life,
You love.
and design the life you love, and it is by
Ace Bursell.
Witzel
Birsel. Bursell.
herself.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's a designer in New York.
And that is definitely
Two minutes. 2 minutes to compassion. Right, so you don't have to overthink it. It's just a practice path. Yeah. Yes. You get an A+ for asking. I can send you all of them. Yeah, happy to do that. And it's actually a book, and I'll share that too. I mean, that's not mine. No. Okay, and then when you're ready, when you feel like you can share, I don't know if some of you did it with your partner, but compare. If you have two, you should end up with two. But just show each other. Socialize what you struggled with, what you learned, what you took away. Socialize if you still hate that person you can't relate to, also fine. Just share it. Many roads to compassion. How'd it go? Okay. So, coming back together now so that I can let you leave quasi on time. I do have a kindergarten move. Shh. Isn't that the worst? It works and everyone hates it, but it works. So awful. They're always like, you infantilized me. I'm like, I know, and it worked. It's hard. So thank y'all for participating in that. That was just like a sort of experimental taste, a little bit of a flavor around what you can do when you dive into visual inquiry, right? So you can use process maps and system maps and visual structures and templates and provocations. Like there's all these different tools, but the thread inside of them is visual literacy, is the visualization of these pieces so that you can actually externalize rather than keeping it internal, and then you can share it with others and you can improve upon it once it's out in front of you. Right? And you can get more and more intricate with, obviously, with your visual language, but you can also start out really simply and it's still really powerful, you know? And so on a good day, if you integrate just basic doodling or basic visual language, you are going to see an increase in retention and comprehension and recall and focus. And on a really great day, you might actually see your heart soften, and you might actually see your me dissolve, and you might actually get into reality in a way that is distinct from how you perceive it only, right? So that's a really great day with visual thinking, and that's part of the power that it unlocks. So thank you so much for playing. We have 15 minutes now of questions and or, you know, harassments, whatever is rising in you. But thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to set up some microphones on either side. If you have a question for Sunni or questions,
Yeah.
I know she's interested in entertaining those. And I just wanted to remind everybody that we are going to be doing a book signing. We do have copies of Doodle Revolution available for sale in the store, but certainly
That's
as
awesome.
Sunni mentioned, she has other books, so if you have brought those, that will take place in Libby Court just outside of the museum store immediately following the Q&A session. So again, if you have questions, you want to come up, and then...
I know it's hard to come up, so like step into your courage and come, and I will hug you.
If
Because I
everybody
am shy
could
too.
line up at the
Y'all wouldn't
mics.
believe it, but it's hard to go to the mic.
And people can come over here and line up at the mics on either side, and then we'll just go back and forth between the two sides.
Are
Hi, Sunny.
Hey,
I'm Karen.
how are you?
I'm good. This was just delightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm curious what strategies you've used in your consulting experiences to break through that mentality. You were talking about doodling being bad or somehow
right.
you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
How have you broken through
Yeah.
that
good
age-old
So,
thing that learning should not be fun?
yeah, that's right. It's
You
a
know, that
great
this is
question.
serious.
It is. It's serious business. Yeah, and I appreciate that question because you do encounter that when you go into all kinds of environments, even those that consider themselves progressive. So there's multiple ways to approach it. And there's have you ever heard of ethos, pathos, and logos? So those are the Socratic. So sometimes you can use logic. Because everything that you need, every argument you would need to make is available in terms of advocating for visual thinking. So if you wanted to use logic, so if I'm going to go talk to a bunch of scientists, then I'm going to bring some of the data around the science for that. But you can also use emotion. So I can say, oh, your team is clearly struggling. They don't have the big picture. They're not able to see each other's perspectives. So you can use emotion. You can appeal to that. And you can also appeal to the ethical pieces of it, which is you have a diverse set of learners here, and they're not getting their needs met and so forth. So there's lots of different ways. But the truth is that practicing is what proves itself in practice. So a lot of times I just name that. I just go into an environment and I say, I know you guys think it's weird. And I know you think it's silly, and you're entitled to think that. So I don't try to run over their feelings about it, because they have feelings about it for a reason. They're protecting something. So I don't blast them. I just say I totally get it, and I'm available for all of your skepticism. And P.S. Can we do this thing? And then it speaks for itself. And that to me has been the most effective. But I still come with my little suitcase of all my case that I can make. But I mostly just meet them where they are and give them a little experiment. Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you.
Hi, Sunny.
Hey.
I'm Jess. Thank you so much for coming and
My
talking
pleasure.
today.
Thank you.
So I'm a graphic designer, and
awesome.
before today I hadn't actually heard of graphic recorders.
Oh, cool.
How awesome,
Right?
A career that is.
I know. Why am I not doing that now?
It's sweet.
What? I do other things.
So
I can train you.
Oh, let's talk after.
You might be a natural.
I do love to doodle.
I
so.
bet you do. Nice.
I'm curious as maybe you can touch on some of your experience using graphic recording to bridge really controversial gaps in things like politics. People have so many different viewpoints.
I know.
I mean, what has that been like? That's got to be revolutionary to see.
It depends. You can definitely integrate it into tough conversations, but those have to be facilitated well. Because the graphic recorder is a silent partner, so they're only going to be reflecting what is actually happening. So if people are going to blows, that's what they're supposed to reflect, because they have to have fidelity to what is happening. So one time there was a proposal, I'm in the middle of, I don't know, a talk on botany or whatever, and this man proposed to this lady, and that goes in there. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to do with botany, but it's in there. So it is very challenging. So in tough conversations, I'm more about what is the facilitator up to, how skillful are they at navigating those, and then the graphic recorder has to have some discernment. So if somebody comes up and says, because that's the only time that a graphic recorder would have to make a call about what not to put up, because if somebody is being offensive to someone else, you actually don't want that captured unless that's the intention of the session, which it almost never is, because then it's up as a record and it's super inflammatory and really frustrating and irritating for people. So what I would do in a circumstance like that is I would actually give them visual thinking things to do themselves with each other in conversation. I wouldn't do a large mural about a heated dialogue. But it's a great question, though.
Super interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And you can use visual thinking to unpack a lot of really challenging topics, which we do it in companies all the time. And it's a softer way to do it, because you can just open it really slowly. And you can just be my me, you can let people speak to their me. My me is so tired of not having a budget and being overworked. You can let them, they can draw themselves thinking these thoughts. Right? And then it's externalized, and then you can make a wall with all of those people with their thoughts, and then they're oh, you're having the same thoughts as me, right? There's so many ways to have these conversations with visual language. Yeah.
Has this been, hi, Sunny. Has this been, to your knowledge, starting to be used or employed in the care or treatment or in the healthcare aspect of early onset dementia or things? Because when I went to see my doctor and get my test, you know, he said, picture, attach, you know, pictures to words and objects to words.
That was his recommendation?
And you were talking about that earlier, and I just would think that people who are having trouble remembering,
Yeah,
it
definitely.
would be something to employ early on to try and extend their ability.
Your doctor recommended that? I'm delighted.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah, because there are studies coming out about the link between mental health and doodling, and also the link between dementia and seniors, and the way that they can still stay present and connected. And I'm actually, my mother-in-law is 78. I think she's watching What Is Up? And I'm thinking about like forcing her to doodle with me just to keep her sharp. She's really, really sharp, but I have an interest in her being around for a long time. So yes, there's nothing to be lost in doing that for sure. And there's a lot of creative ways to go about it. Thank you for asking that too. Yeah.
Hi, Sunny. I like to doodle while listening to long lectures from my teachers. And what kind of exercises would you recommend to get yourself into visual learning?
I would recommend, so I have an online free class. It's called Visual Note Taking 101. I will give it to you all if you want it. And I would recommend, first of all, if your teachers, so, you know, teachers are different in different classrooms. So I'm glad that you're doing that. So a lot of times doodlers are doodling in the margins or they're doodling in secret. So I say bring it to the page. And tell your teacher, I am a visual learner. I know that this is going to be effective for me, and I'm going to do that. And so you don't have to be sneaky about it. Be like really obvious about it. So I've heard that there's a lot of benefits. Now the studies are all over the place around linking drawing to understanding and doodling to memory. So it's not something you have to prove as much, but just tell your teacher, you know, that you need it and that you want to practice it. And then maybe she could even get trained in it, and she could train the other students and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
And for sure, and I'll send you that class. It's 6 modules, and it'll take you all the way from A to Z.
Sounds great, thank you.
Yay, thanks for being here. I love seeing the young people. I mean, I like old people too. I mean, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Yes.
Hi, Sunny.
Hey.
My name's Lauren. I'm a student from UT here in the Honors College.
Oh, cool.
I purchased Doodle Revolution earlier this week, sped read it before tonight,
Nice.
so I had some background. But one thing that really resonated with me is you talked about someone that you knew struggling with undergraduate organic chemistry 1. I'm in that boat right this second.
Oh, wow.
So you talked about how she used visual literacy to help with notes and stuff.
Yes.
So my question is, when I'm in lecture for that particular class, professors go really fast. I'm chicken scratching down everything that I can. So do you recommend trying to incorporate the visual literacy while I'm in the class versus after I leave lecture, going back over, making it look pretty?
Totally. Right. That's a really good question because you're in it right now, right? So how's that going, that class? Is it just hell on wheels?
Basically.
Yeah, it's so hard. That's the class that it just kicks everybody's ass. So both. So the problem with handwritten notes, right, is that most of the time, like you just said, people are scratching. So they're not cultivating the discernment. So that's what graphic recorders do, is they actually listen for the relevant content. And so that is a training in terms of, because teachers, just like me, there's filler content. So you want to start to listen for not what you're going to be tested for, but what is the understanding of this molecule that I'm talking about, and do as much of that as you can, meaning go back and forth. Trust yourself to let some of that text go, to let some of those words go, because you're not going to need them all. But when you're studying for the test, every chapter, do some visual articulation of it. That is going to be a game changer for sure. And also talk to your friends that are also in that class, and y'all do it together. You say, you draw this process of photosynthesis or whatever happens in organic chemistry, and then I will draw this, and we can compare and share and so forth. So that's going to be huge. And we can talk more about that after if you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Hi, Sunny. Thank you. Fantastic presentation.
Thanks. I wasn't sure.
No, it was even for old people like myself.
Isn't it so inappropriate?
We really appreciate it. Occasionally I'll go on the Google machine, like
Uncle
many
Google.
of these people,
Yeah.
and I'll see some of the excellent visual reporters. Robert Reich comes to mind, former Secretary of Labor under Obama, and he takes some of the most complicated concepts and doodles them on the YouTube, and it's fantastic to watch. Any other people that we could follow that are in that same Robert Reich?
That are taking complicated explanatory stuff? Yeah, my friend Dan Rome, he has a lot of books that are called Back of the Napkin and napkin sketching, and he has a systematized way of doing it, so I think he's really intriguing. The woman these icons that were here, her name is Ace Purcell. She has a book called Design the Life You Love. I love her. And I'm thinking about clearly myself. And, Dave Gray. Dave Gray is a phenomenal, he's my co-author, but he is a phenomenal visual thinker and such a deep mind. And he's got work all over the place. So if you Google Dave Gray visual thinking, you'll have images galore.
Fantastic.
That's a great lead, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, hi.
Hi, Sunny. I first saw your work at Del Cap in
Oh,
2010.
no kidding.
And
Amazing.
we sat through that meeting.
Were you in Austin?
I was.
Whoa.
I was part of that panel.
That's nice. Amazing.
I represented the pissed off customers, that group. And so I remember being so struck by what you did and how you captured the essence of, there were arguments, there was, passionate discussion and complaints and stuff, and it all flowed so beautifully.
Thank
What
you.
I find confusing when I think about trying to do, I'm a doodler and a creative, but I don't know how you distill what you're hearing
It's
as
hard.
fast as you did it.
Right.
Like,
it
what-
does take practice, for sure.
How long did it take you to get to the place?
I think that I was naturally a decent listener. So I do have a strong me just like everyone else. Like I'm always talking to myself and stuff, but I do have a background of sort of holding space and listening. So I think that was helpful. Because I have found that journalists typically tend to readily jump into graphic recording pretty well, as do therapists and facilitators, so people that have some training. So I'm not saying it happens overnight, but you really can tell what matters. Some of it is in tone, some of it is in the context, some of it is in whether they repeat it multiple times.
Right.
So there's a lot of different ways to track that you can learn, and I have actually documented those in the book too.
Okay, cool.
About how to listen more
It was
effectively.
seeing it happen in real time,
Yeah,
and
it's
having been a
freaky.
participant and knowing some of the emotions.
And
that
it
were
was like an
flying around.
accurate.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Because I'm like, what if it sucked? And she's like, hi, I saw you and you sucked.
No,
Like
it was really cool. I remember,
I'd be
I
like-
remember coming back and sharing it in social and stuff.
Oh,
and being
that's
really
awesome.
excited about it.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I've worked with Dell many times. I guess you're not there anymore because you live here?
No, I was just part of that panel, so it's there for a couple of different sessions.
That's so cool. That
Yeah,
was
it
like
was fun.
8 years ago, 9 years ago.
A million years ago, yeah.
What? That's
Thank you.
amazing. Thank you. Yeah, there are listening tips in the book for sure, for people that are interested in getting better at that. Yeah. Yes.
Hi, thank you for coming. What you end up with some of these doodles is a fairly specific visual language that relates to one person. And quite often with a layperson, they would need to act as an interpreter to show someone else. I was thinking a bit about the movie Hudsucker Proxy.
Oh, I love that
Where he
one.
goes, for kids, and it's a circle, and everyone looks at him like he's crazy. But I'm wondering what happens next for lay people with the doodles. What form of production follows? Because they could just interpret it into words so that they can explain their ideas to other people who do not have access to them as an interpreter. But I mean, if they are not there with the doodles, what form can the doodles take that still holds on to the visual, the essential vibrancy, while
Like, give me
also
an
keeping
example
some
of
clarity?
Give me an example of a situation.
Well, it kind of depends on the nature of the doodler, but for my own purposes, so I'm an educator, right? If I am, and I'm a fairly competent drawer, but if I am developing my images and I'm trying to pass them on, it helps a whole lot for me to be there explaining them.
Oh, interesting.
But if I wanted something where I could have caught the essence of seeing you talk, for example, tonight, and pass that on without my interpretation, it would be very pretty, but wouldn't actually convey the meaning or reflective content.
Interesting. Yeah, so that is a pretty robust question. But one of the things that I always tell people to do is caption everything that they create. So the mind has a natural inclination to codify visual information. So like if I make a star and I say this represents your mother, the brain's gonna go boop, and it's just gonna link them up, right? So it doesn't even have to be a person that looks like your mother at all in a particular environment. So I always tell people caption it. Like it really can be nonsensical, but if you have it integrated with language, then that's gonna bring some of that confusion way down. But the other thing is, I often encourage people to create their own representation of it. So like you could give them the verbal content or the talk or whatever, and have them do a version of it, and then you can compare your icons and your graphic vocabulary and so forth. Does that make sense?
It does. The most part, that's, I think honestly we would have to sit and have like an hour talk.
Yeah, I know, and also I'd love to see what you actually produce, so then I could figure out how to make it meaningful in different environments.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, it's a robust question, but it's worth asking because if you're an educator, for sure, you know. So maybe you should stay after, and we could go to Pizza Cat. I mean, right? Right? I'm hungry. Yes. Oh.
Hi, Sunny.
Hey.
I just was curious. So let's say that we are a person that doesn't doodle naturally or
Yeah.
just doesn't doodle at all. Would you recommend that we start doodling?
I would. Is that the end of the question? I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did I interrupt
Sure.
you? Okay. Yeah, because I was not a native doodler either. So I really did not integrate visual language or even become aware of it until I was 29 years old. So I was already out of school and grad school and had been working. So definitely, because I was lucky in that I was already facile with language, so it wasn't like I had real struggles with just standard literacy, but people do. And I know a lot of people who would have been served had they had access to visual literacy much, much earlier in their scholastic life. I mean, it's like a lifeboat for a lot of people. So I was lucky in the sense that I didn't need it that desperately, but I know people that do. Millions of people need visual literacy. So yes, you can pick up doodling when you're 70. It doesn't matter when, and it's gonna help. It's gonna help. Yeah. Yes.
All right, Sunny, this will be our last question.
No, Pizza Cat.
Okay. So
No pressure.
Thank you again for your talk. I
Yeah.
just wanted to relate it. We're in an art museum, right?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
do you recommend any visual artists or people that identify as artists that you look
That's so
at
funny.
that you think do the mapping or this kind of ideation, creation well? That you look at, that you're excited about?
I mean, I do know that there are people whose end product is art, and then prior to that, so the prior art is all iterative and doodly. Like we were talking about architects yesterday, and Frank Gehry is, famous for, I have a whole book of his just uber sketches and really sketchy scribbles. So I know people that use it in terms of their process toward art, but then the crystallized piece doesn't necessarily reflect that. Does that make sense? But I'm trying to think of there's a guy named John Bergerman that his end game is doodle art, and it's pretty sophisticated, but I wouldn't say it's communication pieces. Because once you move into interpretation and subjectivity, then it feels like it's in the realm of art and outside more of the realm of visual thinking, which is where I play. But I can think that over because I'd like to know too. Does anybody else know? Jim Henson. Oh, shout out to Jim Henson forever. Yes.
Ken Kaufman is an ornithologist
Oh,
and
cool.
writes field guides
Oh,
about
nice.
birds. And I'll tell you what, when he's in the field, he sketches, and it embodies his experience.
Oh, beautiful.
And I'll tell you what, he also, you can look at the final piece, but I told him a long time ago, I work with him. And his preliminary doodling is priceless.
Yes.
Just priceless.
That makes me think of this book called The California Field Atlas. This book is gorgeous, and it is this wonderful integration of longitude and latitude and botany and technical specifications, but it's watercolor too. So there are people that marry them very well that I strive to be one day. Yeah. So that was our last question. I'm so thankful for you to show up. Oh yes, you subversive lady, stand up.
What is your opinion of emojis?
I use them religiously. Yeah. I think that it's interesting because they're helpful in the sense that they iconize things for people that would never otherwise be using visual language at all. So sometimes when I'm trying to teach emotion, like really quick emotion, I actually give people all the emotional emojis and say pull out the simplest pieces. So what is laughter? It's they're oh, eyebrows, and so it's real fast. So I use them for tools. I think for some of us, they, just like anything, they have pluses and minuses, you know, and I also think that they're not obviously universal, so if you go to a different culture, emojis are totally meaningless in that space. I think it was Steve Jobs that said something like graphical user interface. Y'all remember when like they became icons, that one of his designers was like, oh, so we can befuddle the entire world now, because they weren't using language to describe the icons, they just had the icons and you were supposed to guess what it is. So, you know, I mean, I will use any and all tool available, and I will just contextualize that tool for the process. So I don't have anything against emojis, and in fact, I use them regularly. In fact, I will send a cartwheel emoji to my husband shortly after this. Does that answer? Cool. Yes, thank you.
We've come to the end, sort of.
Let's
thank Sunni.
Thank you. Thank you, Heidi. I'll give you a hug.
And join us outside the TMA store if you'd like to buy a book and get it signed, or if you brought one with you.
Thank you. Thank you all for playing.